Hey, Alexia. Happy Monday. How you doing? How you doing?
Happy Monday! The World Cup is done. It's over. I'm sad and
Allez, le bleu.
happy. Allez le bleu. No, we were cheering for Croatia.
Yeah, Croatia's cool.
Yes, and I love their new president.
Yes. She loves to give hugs.
And how are you today, Foster?
I'm good. I'm tired. Kind of a case of the Mondays, but I am good to go. And I'm excited about our topic today.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it about?
So, first of all, Alexia, you know that I read a lot about languages. I listen to a ton of podcasts about languages. And I kind of noticed this problem that with most things about linguistics, you have two sides. One side, things are super technical, super academic, and the only people that are going to be interested in these kinds of things are language nerds,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then on the other side, you have these internet marketers who are like, hey, you'll be fluent in 1 month with just going to sleep listening to someone say bonjour. And these people make a lot of money, and I kind of hate that too.
Yeah, of course.
But today, I think we have someone that's kind of in the middle that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to talk about it.
Nice. Who is it?
This guy's name is Gabriel Wyner.
Wyner.
Yeah, kind of a whiny name.
Yeah.
You know what to whine means?
Chorão.
Yeah, but it's like chorar com reclamar ao mesmo tempo.
Então, é chorão.
Whiny.
É.
Yeah. Anyway, Gabriel Wyner, he wrote a book called Fluent Forever. And just a little marketing thing, he has two extremely successful Kickstarters. He's made a lot of money doing this. So when I started listening to him and reading his book, I was really taking it with a grain of salt. Do you know what that means?
Taking it with the grain of salt.
With a grain of salt.
Taking it with a grain of salt. Ou seja, com grão de sal?
Mhm.
What's that?
If you take something with a grain of salt, that means you need to be a little suspicious about something.
Okay.
Like,
Você começou com o pé atrás. That's how we would
Yeah.
say it.
like, oh, I read on Facebook today that some politician did this, but it was on Facebook, so you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
You know, be a little bit suspicious. So I was a little bit suspicious because he's very successful, but I started reading it and I liked it a lot.
Before that, I have a curiosity.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah, I would just say I have a question, or I'm curious, or I'm interested.
I'm curious. Yes. Did you read it or did you listen to the audiobook?
Good question. I did both. I read it on my Kindle, which I know Alexia's reading Kindle now and she loves.
Yes.
And I also listened to it on audiobook.
So you did like it and you did both.
Yeah, I actually read it like 2 years ago when I was in Brazil. And then I listened to it again recently.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyway, Gabriel Wyner, he used to be an opera singer, which is kind of common for linguists to have a connection with opera. But so most opera singers, you know, they have to learn like 7 languages because you have to sing in Italian, French, German.
France.
Yeah, opera singers have to know a lot of languages. So to prepare for his opera studies, he went to Middlebury Language Schools, which is a really famous school in Vermont in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a total immersion camp. It's super expensive. I've always wanted to do it, but it's crazy expensive.
Crazy expensive, like what?
I think a program is like a summer, so like 3 months, and I think it's like $20,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really expensive. But they give a lot of scholarships and stuff too. But normally it's like opera singers doing this kind of thing. But when you go to the camp, they make you sign a contract. Like when you arrive in the camp, so for example, he was studying German for 14 weeks. From the day one, he is not allowed to speak anything but German. And if anyone sees him speaking anything except German, they can just say you have to go home and they don't give your money back at all.
What?
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So anyway, Gabriel, Gabriel Wyner, he was always an opera singer and he was trying to learn languages. And then he went to this camp and he learned a lot of things about languages. And now he speaks like 9 or 10 different languages. And he's like a famous language guy. Has an
hmm
app and all this kind of stuff. So he wrote a book called Fluent Forever. And the idea is that we can learn languages faster in a more effective way and never forget them. So, Alexia, today I just wanted to talk about some of the main points that he makes in the book and just talk about if we agree or disagree or what we think. Okay?
Perfect.
Cool. So, in the first part of the book, he spends a lot of time saying, he says this many times, learning the sounds and pronunciation of the language. Doing that first is crucial. It's fundamental. And I started this book and I was like, that's my boy, Gabriel Wyner. So, really, what he says is kind of an approach that we take too, that children learn languages from listening, not studying. So, it's the natural kind of way to learn languages. And when you understand the sounds, he talks a lot about this, but if you can understand what someone says, then learning grammar and vocabulary is much, much easier.
That's true.
These are things we talk about all the time at Inglês no Cru. So on this point, agree or disagree with Gabriel?
I do agree a lot.
Yeah, I think that was great. Okay, so his second big point in the book is that we should focus on learning in the natural way like children and focus on comprehensible input. Do you know what that is?
Um,
It's kind of a linguistic.
I think it would be better if you explain it.
Yeah, so this is another example of when linguistic and linguist people use fancy words when really they don't need to. But comprehensible input. So with languages, we have input and output, right? So input is reading and listening, and then output is speaking and writing. But for us, really, you can just think speaking is output and then listening, input. Okay?
Okay.
So comprehensible input is when you can listen to something in your foreign language that you're learning, in this case, English, and it's something where you can understand most things.
Just like Inglês no Cru Rádio.
Yeah, it depends on the person's level,
Yeah,
but yeah.
most of times.
So really the idea is, let's say, for example, you are beginning to learn Spanish. The first thing you should do if you're super basic, you should not watch La Casa de Papel or Narcos. You should start with very basic phrases where you can understand, like, oh, he's saying, hola, ¿cómo estás? And you kind of understand what's going on. And the big idea with comprehensible input is you should always keep pushing yourself just a little bit out of your comfort
Yeah,
zone.
first words are basic expressions, and then you start to form like bigger phrases with everything that you just studied.
Yeah. And then you can start listening to slow conversations. Then you can listen to more intermediate conversations. And eventually you can listen to native materials.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of this idea of comprehensible output because I really think it helps you learn things naturally. You know, if you're only listening to what you understand, for example, if you listen to La Casa de Papel, you will see a lot of words and complicated grammar structures. And maybe you will try to use some of them, but you'll just be too confused.
Super confused.
But if you listen to like a children's bedtime story, that's much more suited, much more appropriate for a beginner.
Yes. That's why I always tell my students, my Portuguese students, to buy like O Pequeno Príncipe in Portuguese.
Yeah.
So they can read and understand if they are basic.
Start with that. And there is a free PDF if you just say PDF o Pequeno Príncipe. Tem PDF que tem inglês, em português e espanhol.
Ah, nice.
Muito legal. Okay, so comprehensible input, it's a good thing. I agree with him. You?
Yes, I do.
Cool.
I'm agreeing with everything.
Yeah. So his last point is a little more complicated, but it's interesting. So he says, recalling is much more important than reviewing. So that's a little complicated, so let's break it down.
Okay, so recall is that thing that they do with cars, right?
Totally different. Yeah.
Totally different?
Yeah, but yeah, so recently my car was recalled, which means
it was a very, very good experience. Saturday morning, 8 a.m., we went there. Yeah, Foster was super happy.
Yeah, but pretty much if, for example, with cars, if there is a malfunction, like for some reason, all of the wheels start falling off the cars in a certain model, they recall that car, which means everyone that has that car has to go to the car shop and get it fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this case,
recall has more to do with memory, and studying, reviewing has more to do with studying. Okay. So most language students, when they're trying to learn new vocabulary or something, they just make a list or flashcards. They study every day, and it doesn't really make too much sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what he is saying is that our brain makes connections and associations in a lot of weird ways, in a variety of ways. So if you're studying vocabulary, if you just study, okay, the numbers in English, okay, 20, 21, 22, 24, whatever. Skip 23. So, okay. See, it doesn't work that well. So he's saying it makes a lot more sense if you think, I'm 28 years old. And then when you're thinking about, like, oh, how old am I? How do you say that in English? Oh, 28. Okay, so if it's 28, then maybe it's 24.
The best example would be what I was doing during this weekend with some words that I was reading out loud and you were correcting me, and now I won't forget, I think.
Yeah. So really the idea is if you have to remember something, like, oh, how do I say that? I know that one because I remember I was reading with Foster and he corrected me. Oh yeah, that's it. If you do that, you will remember something for much more time, much more effectively than if you just memorize a list of colors and animals.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I think a good final point, he talks about you should avoid translations as much as possible. So all the things he's talking about in the book with focusing on sounds and comprehensible input, that really helps you avoid translation. And in general, Alexia, I think this is a pretty good book about language learning. So most of language learning books are super complicated or just marketing BS. And I think this one is kind of in between. So
yes.
He makes some complicated linguistic concepts more simple, and I would recommend it.
I would read it for sure. BS, it's bullshit.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. Trying to keep English no crew clean.
Just to end this episode, I want to ask you, which was the word that you learned last night in Portuguese? Not a word, but a new brand.
New brand?
Yes.
In Portuguese?
Yes. That's why I'm doing this, because...
Ooh. Give me a hint.
My dad is very ill, and he's using...
Vicky Vaporub.
Vicky Vaporub.
Vicky Vaporub. Vicks Vapor Rub. You Brazilians are crazy. We will see you tomorrow.
Bye.